Chris, welcome to the show.
Excited to be here. Truly. For people that don't know, I hate to do this, but we're 30 seconds into it. Jack and I just shot the shit for 20 minutes. And I'm sure you and I could have totally shot the junk on this for even longer. For listeners of this show, Jack is such a humble and good human being. And he's so good at what he does. So both thank you for being a new friend in my circle. It means a ton that you can hold some space and listen to some stuff, but I'm really excited to dive into this too. Cause I think it's needed now more than ever.
Thank you very much. What a lovely way to start the episodes. Any future guests, this is the bar that has been set.
This is it. Yeah. This is the first date. Yeah. Bring the flowers, open the doors.
That is it, man. That is it. No, I appreciate that. And mate, truly, I'm really excited for us to run this up. I said to you off air, I've been a follower of your work for many years now, way over 5 years. It actually, funny enough,
5 years? Wow.
Yeah. Way before I even understood that I had an ADHD brain, I was a follower of your work. So I was really fascinated by the nervous system work that you were doing. And I also got caught, if anybody follows you, they'll know your unique kind of signature of content where it's almost like brain rot content to start with. And then you hijack 15 seconds in and you're going into the source.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's crazy that has turned into so much. And
it's great branding as well.
It stopped being funny. A couple last year, it stopped being funny. For people that have no idea, my content would be dopamine addict content, where somebody picks up a sheet of ice off of a table and they lift it up to go slam it down. And before your system gets the reward of that, suddenly there's my face. And I'm like, hey, you know that feeling you have right now that I completely blunted? This is where you learn about your brain. And I've been doing that for a couple of years, and I've done it in weird and swirly ways. But it's taken me all the way to writing this book on dopamine and what it does and why we're stuck and why we're so glued. And you and I, before we hit the record button, why does the world feel less magical? Why are people stop? Why are people not weird anymore? And we talked about that for a minute too. But yeah, it's an interesting place to be.
Absolutely love it. I'm going to ask you a question later, so I'll shelf that around why do we think the world is less magical? Because I think I actually want to bring in that conversation that we had off air on air. But before we do, most people may know you for your nervous system work at the moment. I think you get some crazy views with 30 million people a month or something like that seeing your stuff.
Yeah.
But 10 years ago, you were finishing school to be a chiropractor. So what is it that we need to know over the past 10 years to understand why you do what you do today?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, 10 years in September will be the anniversary of my life changing. It as many good life changes happen. It happened for the worse, and then it happened for the better in a way that I could have never understood. So I went to school for undergrad in biology, environmental science, and chemistry. I really fell in love with science in undergrad. I had a really extraordinary undergrad. I played sports and I did a lot of different things, but it taught me how to learn in a way that was curiosity led, not fear led. So for my entire high school career, and I think a lot of people probably might align with this, especially my ADHD people, they are performative learners, which means that they're learning to prevent feeling dumb. They're learning to prevent something instead of learning to be curious about how it can benefit their lives. And for so many people, that's a paradigm, that's a framework that they've been thinking. And many times they don't know where it actually came from. They don't know how it actually showed up. So I went through school, really loved that. And then I was like, you know what? I really like the natural sciences. I really want to help people, but I don't want to be an MD. I don't think I want to be a DO. So I found chiropractic and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I was going through it and I enjoyed it. And the schoolwork was we did quarters and it was really heavy and we had board exams coming up, but something was always off. So I tell everybody that during this period of time, I had this white ceiling syndrome. And I would be laying in bed after a long day, 8 hours of classes, 6 hours of study, trying to eat, trying to take care of my body. And I would fall asleep at night and I would look up at the ceiling and be like, is this it? Is this it? Is this what this is supposed to feel like? Something doesn't feel off. Nothing's wrong, but it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. And I'm going through this entire process and I got hit by a car riding my bike back from school one day and completely shattered my body. I had a helmet on, thank God, but I went to the hospital, was laid up on bed rest. It was right before finals too. And like if you miss finals, every final you miss is like a grand, right? So like missing tests and missing tests and missing practicals and can't stand up. And like that's my first taste of like anxiety and depression. And this goes on for about 2 weeks. And in that period, I'm like, oh my gosh, like my coping mechanism of moving my body to like deal with my feelings is no longer available. And now I'm scared because I'm like, I don't know what to do with these feelings. Like, what is this feeling? What the heck is going on? Because I would yo-yo, I'd wake up and I'd feel really anxious, want to move my body. And then the day would go on and I'd be exhausted from the anxiety. And then the depression would creep in. And I'm like, now I'm depleted, but like I need to get things done. And it was this weird yo-yoing experience that like really started to screw me up. And then my dad died. Best friend, like he lived in the city with my brother and I. My brother was my roommate through school. And my dad committed suicide out of the blue. And it is by far, and I really mean this, and it will not make sense to everybody, and I'm really okay with that. It is the worst thing and the best thing that has ever happened to me. And I can't speak for my brother, but I think it is probably the worst and best thing for him as well. It is the worst because I never get to hug my dad again. I never get to yell at him because he's like burning chicken on the grill. I never get to have him pick me up from school or there's so many things that I never get to have again. And that hurts. It hurts in a way that you don't know something can hurt. And the grieving process of that is just hell. Truly, truly hell. That, yeah, no, they're in a different place. And, you could still have a relationship with them and it's energetic, but it's like, well, fuck you. I want to, like, kiss my dad's bald head. My dad was way shorter than I was. Like, I'm tall in the family, which is awesome, especially for my older brother. I never let him forget that. But I'm like, I just want to hang out with my dad. I want to hang out with my pops. I want to watch some bullshit TV. And I just want to sit there with him while he's hanging out. I never get that. And he never got to meet his daughter, my daughter. And it sucks. So after he died, I didn't know what to do. I really had no idea. I was a shell. Like my body was broken and then all the emotions and the grieving and everything. I was 23 and I didn't know what to possibly do. And about 4 months after my dad died, I found out that I was going to be a dad. And this by far is the best thing that has ever happened to me, by far. And my daughter is now 8, going on 9. Um, but it is the most extraordinary thing. I never thought that I could love something outside of myself so much. And I don't say that from like a big fat ego, but the instant I held my daughter, I'm like, oh, bullets, cars, whatever, I will die for you. And that's also wrong thinking. And I've had to realize that over the past 3 years too, because I can keep her safe from physical danger. The thing that kills most people is they forget to live. So everyone, I will die for my kid. I'll die for my partner. Will you live for them? Will you get up at 4 a.m. and go to the gym? Will you go to therapy? Will you journal? Will you do hard things? Will you have those hard conversations, even if it doesn't feel good? And that was where everything kind of started for me. It started from the complete floor. I was broke, right? And this is where I started to go. And I remember going to a weekend seminar and thinking to myself, like, what am I going to do? I really don't want to open a clinic. Like, I was a really good chiropractor for what it was worth. Like, I was setting records in the clinic. I was a really good practitioner because I'm really good with people. But I always would go and I would leave and do all the things. And I'm like, this still isn't it. This isn't it. And I went to a neuroscience lecture at Emory University and I was like, oh my God, this is answering all these questions that I have because all I wanted more than anything is to be pissed at something plausible for why my dad died. I just want to like, fuck you, right? I don't know if we can swear, but we're too late now. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? What the fuck? Like, I needed you and you bailed. Like, I'm a young man trying to figure life out. And now I'm what? Where are you? I need to be a dad and I don't know how to be a dad. And you cut and run. No letter, no phone call, no bullshit. The police call me. Fuck you. But I want to know why. Like, just give me a reason, like some reason. And like, you can string together the reasons. Um, there's never closure is the thing I've had to realize with the person. It's something that you have to find inside yourself. But what I did find, and something that's been really practical for me, is self regulation. and neuroscience and understanding it. And I was never an amazing student, truly. Like I was an okay student, and school teaches based on grades, right? And that for me was so fear driven that it was hard for me to learn. But when I could study neuroscience and I started to study um, at Emory, and I started to study with these online courses, and I started to like buy textbooks and all these other things that they were teaching at the universities, and all the other things. I was downloading them illegally. If I'm being really honest with you, anybody that knows, like, 2015 to 2020 rushlib.com, like, you know. So I'm like torrenting neuroscience textbooks while I'm also passing my boards, and I'm also taking care of my daughter. And shortly after my daughter was born, I was a single parent. Um, and trying to figure it out without a mom there, and like no help. And my brother is trying to pass all his shit. And like, it's not that people weren't there and weren't loving me. It was just so low. And I'm really grateful for that now. Truly, truly grateful for that. But it sucked. But all this science starts to come together. And I'm like, I get this. I get this in such a way. And then I start to implement the things that I'm learning. Because the one thing that I did learn is through all the science and all the things, there wasn't an explanation of what to do next. The studies point to the cause, but nothing points to the solution. So I'm like, okay, what if I start to deploy different protocols, different systems, different strategies? And this is like 2016, 2017. So like all of this is like kind of new, like Huberman and all the other neuroscientists that are out there, like everyone's like doing research, but no one is implementing strategy. So I start to compile strategy, right? When I feel anxious, I do X. When I feel depressed, I do Y. When I lack executive skill sets, I do Z. When I'm really struggling to learn, it's likely because of this. Now there's a biological component. Oh, now there's a resilience component. Oh man, now there's an emotional component. Fucking hell. All right, now there's a social component to it. Okay, now all of those things merge together. Okay, but then there's a spiritual purpose to it, and there has to be an intuitive sense, and then there's life purpose. And I'm like, okay, okay, but my brain has always thought through systems. It's always thought in protocols. But now I have all of this information to compound on that and layer over it to help me get different lens when things don't work, when things don't make sense, right? And 2 years went by after school, and I hadn't really opened a practice. I was kind of consulting. I was doing management consulting and like teaching companies how to scale because I've always had a knack at business. Um, in high school, I helped scale a foam business with my business mentor. One of the greatest experiences of my entire life, literal foam, like foam noodles and foam packaging. It was extraordinary. And I became a manager at that company, and then we scaled it. And I learned all these business things. I got an MBA right before that was even a thing. Um, Thanks, Don, by the way. Don and I made a deal. So Don never, ever, 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 Don Tate would never let me buy him lunch, but he would take me to lunch at least once a week. And I always wanted to buy him lunch because I was making like 20 bucks an hour in high school. I was rich, right? Fat rich, right? And I was like, oh, dude, just let me buy. And he said, the first year that you make $1 million, you can take me to lunch. So I'm not there yet, but I'm going to get Don lunch here sooner rather than later.
Love that.
But I started this management consulting company, and it was making okay money. Like I wasn't doing anything amazing. I was helping small businesses understand SOPs and strategy. And then everything flipped. And I was like, why am I not teaching the things that saved my life to people? Why am I not teaching these systems? Why am I not helping people better understand what's not connected inside of them? And I started. So I started teaching executives, I started teaching business owners, and then they were like, oh my gosh, where have you been? You've been teaching us SOPs and like how to use Excel for like, what the fuck? What? You have all this neuroscience background and it's like good and you're good at talk. What the heck is wrong? And then I'm like, well, yeah, I know, but like you guys don't really want the coaching, right? Like you don't really want that. But now it's been 10 years, like I said, since I've started that. I've gone through Peck University neuroscience. I've gone through Harvard and Stanford. I've gone through so many different courses and continuing education and all of these other things that while I still hold massive regard to people blowing through their PhDs and all the effort, my board of advisors for my company is insane now to the standard that we hold, the science and the literature and all of these different things. Uh, but it was all the pain and suffering that brought me here and not avoiding it, but choosing to say, okay, if pain and suffering are opportunities where I'm lacking love in my life. I got a lot of love to fill. I got a lot of fun. I got a lot of weird left in my life to kind of get back to. And that's what I've been doing with all of this. And I'm using structure and systems and science to help me better create containers to hold purpose and passion and intuition and choice. And it works really well for me. And I've just been teaching it outwardly to a lot of other people, and it seems to be working for them as well, for which I truly and I humbly take absolutely no credit for, because I can give people the blueprints, but they're the ones building it. You like the people that are out there, like they're the ones that are folding these things up and they're like, well, is this going to work? And I'm like, I have no fucking clue. Give it a rip. Like, don't be afraid to fail. Eat shit. But that's the only way that you figure out what your nervous system needs. And I tell this to everybody that the entire point of having a regulated nervous system is to be able to trust and listen to your intuition. That's the entire point, is you build evidence of trust and evidence against the contrary of fear. And when I coach my executives who are running billion-dollar companies, that's all they want to work on, in case anybody's ever wondering. I'm like, oh, I got to get my nervous system regulated. They want to know how to trust. Like, how do I get myself out of the way? And that's what I do.
Super fascinating. And that was actually, funny enough, the next question I was going to ask. But
Ah,
I'm going to park that for a sec before I do ask it, because I'm just
yeah.
curious. I said this to you off air when we spoke about this previously. That's such an intense journey for anybody to have to go to, and for you to have made out of it what you have is highly impressive. And I'm curious what you feel like the biggest lesson you've learned about yourself through going through that has been.
You're gonna make me cry. I am a very passionate man. I'm a very emotive man, and I'm a very romantic person too. I've always been like this, and I lost it for a while. I think there's two fundamental things that I've learned through all of this. The first one is that I'm okay being super science and bearded and all of those other things that make me the masculine man and all the other bullshit. But I still live by like the laws of love out there. Like, I still want to go do good onto other people, and I want people to feel safe, and I want people to be passionate about what they do. And I'm super okay with that. And I kind of lost that for a while because I was so jaded against the world. And like, no, none of this shit's real, right? Like, and everything needs to be functional and feasible and ROIs and SOPs and strategy and system and bottom and gross and net and profit. And then you kind of get some of those things and it just doesn't matter. What matters is more than anything that um, I wake up and I make breakfast for my daughter every day. I wake up and I make coffee for people that I love. I wake up and don't look at the world and say, man, it's fucked up. I look at the world and go, man, like there's a lot of curiosity that we need to remember people can use. There's a lot of opportunity here. And it doesn't mean that the world's not messed up in some places. I'm not naive to that either. But attacking fear with fear has only ever produced fear, ever. So I go after it with curiosity and play and love. And like we talked about before we hit the go button, was like, we need to get people back to their weirdness. So if like people looked in on my life, it wouldn't make sense to them. It wouldn't make sense that I can do the things that I do because they don't get it. And that's okay. That's the point. So I think living my life in that way of being able to play and be there for my daughter, and she's doing something, I can hear her in the background. I think she's like breaking Legos or something like that. But that's the point for me. It's always been about people. It's always been about play, curiosity, and love. Like, and anytime something gets hard for me, it's always a return to that.
I imagine a large portion of that is transmitted through the work that you do as well, which leads me to like that, following on with that question
Yeah.
that you asked a moment ago, which is, what is it that people you recognize as a pattern are coming to you with the most? If they're maybe an
Ooh.
executive or an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. Um, I know, you know, we know, everyone knows. We can't save people. We can't. Like, if you try to save somebody from themselves, all you're doing is enabling it into the future, ever. So people come to me and they say, okay, I'm burnt out. I'm stressed out. Something's not right. And I need to work on my nervous system because I'm so stressed. And I go, yep, yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And when we start to work on the nervous system, whether it's in the groups that I run or consulting or speaking or anything else like that, most people are really surprised to hear that, well, you didn't mention anything about the amygdala or the prefrontal cortex or any of those things. And I'm like, well, no, because what we need to do is we need to challenge old experience with new narrative and new action. And that's really hard. That's really hard because what we confuse so often is familiarity for safety. Familiarity is comfort, and that's really important. But what we need is safety. And safety is something that we don't build inside of our comfort zone. Safety is something that we build through trust. Safety is something that we need through a new experience from an old pattern. And that's really difficult to be able to go do. So most people come to me and they're like, they say the same thing over. I'm burnt out. I'm stressed out. Nothing's necessarily wrong. I just don't feel like myself. Great. Let's go do it. So we work on patterns and we work on the routines, and there is truly something to be said about taking care of the physical body. And there is for sure, like, all of this nervous system stuff makes a world of difference for people in understanding, okay, this is probably what's going on with dopamine. This is probably what's going on with serotonin. You need a morning routine. We need to get your cortisol arousal response. Like, we got to get all these things like lined up. We got to get them tuned up, because right now you got the circadian mismatch, and like, oh yeah, you've also got conflict that's unresolved. And all right, we got to work on emotional regulation as well. And here's what that kind of looks like. And we work on all those parts and pieces. And again, like, the entire point of getting all of that there is to trust what you've known all along. Most people know, and that's the hardest thing. And I ask everyone, so I work with 4 people at a time in a one-on-one setting. And every single time somebody comes into a one-on-one setting and we're doing our onboarding sequence, right? And they're like, okay, so like frontal cortex and like amygdala and like, what's my dough? Like, what's all this? And I'm like, do you know what to do? I just can't do it. And it just shuts them down. Like, I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you know what you need to be doing right now? And do you know what's wrong? And you just can't admit it. And every single time they're like, oh shit, I signed up with this dude for 6 months. This is what we're going to do for 6 months, is like look under the rug and pull all my, and yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because we're so afraid of inner conflict. We're so afraid of cognitive dissonance, which is thoughts, feelings, actions in conflict, in misalignment. We're so afraid of those things, but that's the stuff that's stealing your bandwidth in the background. That's what's kind of keeping you anchored into these patterns. And you're like, I don't know why I'm self-sabotaging. Well, breaking sabotage patterns is energy intensive. It's escape velocity. If we talk about like physics and rockets, like to break out of the atmosphere takes 90% of the fuel. To sustain orbital drift doesn't take like anything, because there's no atmosphere. There's no gravitational pull pulling you back in, but 90% of the fuel getting a rocket out into space is burning through escape velocity, right? You have to bust through the gravitational drift that we're pulling constantly towards the center of the earth. So we got to do it. And we got to do those hard things. And what I'm good at is, because I've gone through a lot of my own inner work, and I'm not a perfect person by any means. I'm fucked up, and I'm just a degenerate for most all intents and purposes. But you find people in your life that you can talk to. And I can do this. You and I did this right before we recorded. There's some people that you can just innately talk to and say, this is what's going on. And they're not going to judge you. They're not going to criticize you. There's a risk to it, right? There's a social risk to being vulnerable with somebody. But that social risk, especially for my ADHD people have a higher threshold for the need for norepinephrine and dopamine, which means that your system has a lower set point than most of us for what is stimulatory, what creates stress at like an excitatory level. So social risk launches that, which is oftentimes dangerous for people that have ADHD. And what that looks like practically is most people with ADHD have this masking tendency, right? People have this like, oh no, I'm going to be this person, right? Like, there's a quote that floats around the ADHD spaces that um, I really like the person. I really like who you are. And there's like a sidebar that's like, yeah, I made this person specifically for you. You should like them. I made it perfectly for you in every way, shape, and form. But it's not authentic. It's not genuine. And that's because oftentimes the social risk of being your authentic self and your vulnerable self is so stimulatory. It's so high risk that the nervous system kind of blows a fuse and goes, it's not worth it. Mask. Be this version that they're going to like. But when you do that, you're also suppressing that dopamine response that's going to build motivation. And you can see this in entrepreneurs that have ADHD that have figured this thing out. where they're like, no, I got to be me. Fuck everything else. I'm like, I'm not worried about that. And then they're just themselves. And then they're like, how do you get so much done? How are you so motivated? Well, they're not trying to swim laps with their hands tied behind their back. They're just going at a normal and steady pace. But for most people with ADHD, they have that lower risk factor. So it takes more to get them up there. But if you've ever met somebody with ADHD and they look at you and they like get that kind of cozy feeling in their body, best friend, right? It's like a dog that you like pet their belly and they're going to be your best friend forever because they're like, oh my God, I can be myself with you. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, thank God. And then they're in this totally different world. They'll tell you everything and anything and do all of those things. You unlocked a different part of your ADHD. You've figured out that you need to be around people that are at that standard that you do feel safe with. But that's a trust factor. You can't give out or display or exemplify trust if you don't truly understand it. If you don't understand how you built trust or why you feel safe with that person, this is how people end up masking and then trauma bonding. Like, I'm going to give you all this information. And then they give all that information, but you gave it to the wrong person. And then that person is a fucking cunt. And then they use it against you. And then your system goes, told you, you're an asshole. And I'm never going to share again, ever in a million years. But when you blunt epinephrine, you also blunt dopamine. And when you blunt dopamine, dopamine not only plugs us into motivation and anticipation and experiential neuroplasticity and learning through action, plugs the external world into internal value, intrinsic value. So most people that have ADHD also have this ADHD blunting effect where everything just kind of feels numb and just like nothing really feels like okay. And that's also because they have this blunted dopamine effect where they either get hyperfixated and everything makes sense. And like some people think that they have this like manic response and they're like, oh no, I'm bipolar. It's like, well, maybe you need to talk to your mental health professional about those things. But that hypervigilance that pops up and that like hyper focus that comes through with ADHD is also phasic dopamine. And we can talk about that in a second, rocketing you through all the inhibitions, through all the fears, and putting you at a place of performance that if you can learn how to activate and trigger and sustain, you're set. You're 100% set. And this has to do with sprinting versus jogging too. It's a model I teach my entrepreneurs, which I'm sure is on the list that we can get
It,
into.
that's
Bunch of
literally,
information.
yeah, no, I love that, mate. I love that. And that's super helpful. I've got one note for today,
Yeah.
which I needed to remember for myself, which was the sprinter and jogger. But before we do, because
Yeah.
that I'm thinking about the order of which that would make sense for people to digest and learn this in. And I don't want anybody to get tripped up on the fact that they may not know or understand what even their nervous system is. So, like, how would you describe what the nervous system is? Like, what actually is the nervous system to somebody who maybe that language is something that they've seen online, but
Yeah. Yeah.
find it
Got to
difficult to
work
like,
on self-regulation. Yeah. Because
yeah,
it's such a buzzword right now. So the nervous system is a part of the bodily system. It is the brain, spinal cord, eyes is the central nervous system, the CNS. Then we have the peripheral nervous system, which is all the nerves and connections outside of the central nervous system. So eyes, brain, spinal cord, central, peripheral nervous system, PNS is everything kind of outside of that. And what the nervous system is designed to do is to give you an understanding and experience of what is going on in the external world. That's it, right? It's trying to help us understand, like, is something hot? Is something cold? Is something dangerous? Is something threatening? Is something feel good? Is something, and it kind of builds drive and understanding and it's collecting data constantly. So you have our five senses and that's pulling information in. And we have social sense and then we have different biological drivers that we also have to take care of. So if we don't take care of sleep, diet, and exercise, our system tends to drift more towards reactive, which means that you are not in the intentional driver's seat. It's called autonomy, right? Where we lose our autonomy if we're not well slept, where there's so much stress that we can't really like learn what to do and dictate with that. And then when we become reactive, reactive patterns always revert to familiarity, never to creative power, never to like learning and doing something differently. It always goes to familiarity. The familiarity feels comforting, right? Because it's like, okay, I know this, right? This self-sabotage pattern, like, is it really that bad? Like, is it really, I just need to doom scroll for a little. I just check my phone for a second, or I just need to go back to like this person, or it just, whatever the heck the thing is, right? So we oftentimes revert to that. But what that does is it perpetuates patterns that actually aren't serving us. We can't really like move through and make change. And we're designed to like evolve. We're not supposed to stay the same. We're supposed to be different people. We're supposed to go through hard experiences and learn and move in a way that's intentional. But so many people get locked up in the freeze and fawn and fight and flight response of reactive patterns. They don't know how to go do that. But the nervous system wants to do it. We can see this. The nervous system has plasticity, which is the brain's ability to change due to circumstance until we die. Now, we have a shit ton of it when we're kids, right? But as we get older, it doesn't go away. It's just how you activate it looks very different. So when we talk about the nervous system, what I'm using is a lens of physical, which is sleep, diet, exercise. And this is the framework that I've developed. Anybody can go rip it off and use it. It's not going to hurt my feelings. So physical, which is sleep, diet, exercise, and habits, right? This is like the platform where everyone should start. So we need to get good sleep consistently. 8 hours of sleep is like the benchmark. You got to figure out where you kind of fall, but the routines around it matter. Bedtime, morning routine, circadian biology. Then we need to move our body. You have to move your body. Men need to lift weights at least 3 times a week to increase skeletal load, to increase muscle mass. And this does all kinds of great things for the brain, right? Brain derived neurotropic factor. We see people lifting weights increases brain derived neurotropic factor, which helps build resilience to the brain's oxidative factors, which is a really fancy bullshit way of saying like your brain with oxidative stressful factors does not operate well, right? If you eat like McDonald's and fast food for like weeks on end, it does bad because you're putting bad in, but the body also produces its own oxidative bullshit from just life and stress, right? Like if you lift a ton of weights, like you start to produce different types of like carbonic acid in the body, and then your muscles can't do aerobic exercise, which is the use of oxygen, or it's the use of non-oxygenated systems instead of oxygenated, right? This is what happens when you lift weights. But when you lift weights, you're practicing something challenging and difficult in a safe setting. So then your system takes that model and it can use and adopt and adapt that in stressful settings, which is really cool. So sleep, diet, and then exercise, move your body 20 minutes a day minimum, hit the gym 3 to 5 times a week. Same thing for women. Women during ovulation phase versus luteal phase, y'all need different things. We can dive into that. But for the most part, during ovulation, when testosterone and estrogen are the highest, move your body as much as you feel free to go do. If it's Pilates, if it's lifting weights, if it's running, go do it. But your body wants to move during those periods of time. Men, let's just go fucking do it. Unless if you have a woman in your life, men's cycle will match a woman's cycle and you can kind of like go reciprocate with that. That's a totally different podcast. But then we move into food. So the food aspect of it is protein forward, get your fiber, try to eat whole foods. Like it's such an emotional conversation and people are like, well, if I can do vegan, I don't care. Like you got to figure it out. You got to figure out what works for you. And then there's all these other tiers, but the physical platform of understanding your nervous system is making sure that it has the tools and resources to build, sustain, learn, and create. So if you're not getting good sleep, it trashes everything. You are not resilient. Your system is really reactive. Same thing if you're eating absolute dog shit or you're drinking too much coffee or you're not staying hydrated. Like every ounce of research, like the number one factor that we can see consistently that leads to anxiety, depression, all cause mortality increase, bad sleep. So like you really got to work on sleep. And then there's basically 4 other platforms. So there's mental, certainty, predictability, and understanding. There's emotional, this is safety, security, and integration. Then there's social, which is community, culture, communication. And then there's intuition, right? So there's life purpose that goes up and beyond that, which has everything to do with the nervous system, but also nothing to do with the nervous system. But that's everybody wants to get to that point where they're like, oh, I got this like spidey sense and I'm not going to immediately take action on it, but I'm going to listen to it and kind of see what's going on. I'm going to use my fear for me instead of my fear using me for it. Um, so that's what the nervous system kind of does and breaks apart is how do we think? How do we feel? Why am I thinking this way? Why am I feeling that way? Why am I taking action? Why am I not taking action? And just looking at it through the lens of where your nervous system feels safe, where it feels secure, where it feels understood, and where it does not.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on if you have an ADHD brain, that increase the level of importance for you to be doing that work, or how, if it
Hell
does,
yes.
someone with this brain type interact differently with the nervous system. I could be wrong, but I almost see this as the potential of having like a multiplier effect if it's not done.
Yeah. No, so it is 100%. So a multiplier effect, I talk about it in compounding. So somebody that has ADHD, your system is just set up in a couple different ways. First off, your system, and we're going to talk about dopamine for a moment here. There is a lot of bad information about dopamine out there, a ton of it. And I always tell people to go do their own research, or if you can't do your own research, or it's really hard because like this shit is dense. Um, I am always citing sources is my goal. So the ones that I'm going to talk about here, they are not, and I'm saying this out of full transparency, they are not gigantic studies, but so many people have a resonating factor with them that it's like it might make a lot of sense. So what these studies are looking at in terms of dopamine are two different ways that dopamine is expressed in people with ADHD. Now, before I do the ADHD, I'm going to talk about like kind of like the baseline of like what somebody, I'm going to say neurotypical, but neurotypical doesn't exist, right? Neurotypical is a statistical point of what we think average is, but like there's not a person that like lives there, right? So like we have to like break up that caveat that's like it's taking an average of like 40,000 people and saying like Timmy lives in them. No, Timmy doesn't exist, but we use that as a statistical marker. So somebody that is neurotypical, right? They have tonic and phasic dopamine. And what dopamine is primarily used for is to put you into a state of learning or action to achieve to receive or to get closer to value or a reward, right? That's what it is. Your brain identifies and goes, oh my gosh, if I take action, if I learn, if I achieve, I will receive or get closer to this value, right? And value can be a ton of different things. It can be food, it can be money, it can be relationships, it can be a ton of it. It can be drugs, it can be scrolling, it can be all of these different things. The biggest thing is that it's not just value that we have decided, it's perceptive value, which is ludicrous to think about because, like, why do so many people want to wear Rolexes? It is a mechanical watch, but it holds social status. And that social status is a perception of value. So many people are going out and like, I got no beef with Rolex. I think there's way cooler watches that you can go out and go get. Like, it's a whole conversation that I got. But like, you can go out there, but you see a bunch of people, and I live in flipping Naples, Florida. So there's like Rolexes as far as the eye can see. And I always look at that and go, dopamine, attaboy, did a good job, right? You are proving social status and value, and you're exemplifying that value. So tonic dopamine is dopamine that kind of floats in the background. So when we talk about tonic dopamine, it is kind of a buffer for your everyday life. And what it's there to buffer against is emotional waves. It's kind of designed to keep you steady, and it's designed to do kind of just regular bullshit tasks, right? Put the dishes in the dishwasher, brush your teeth, pick your nose, clean your ears, like whatever the thing is, right? For me, obviously it wasn't shaving today, but I got shaved tonight. Like it's all those very small mundane things. And tonic dopamine is designed to bolster up that and be there. And you deplete it as the day goes by. So it gets harder and more difficult if you're not stuck into routines and familiarity. Tonic dopamine is not going to be there at the end of the day the way that it typically would be at the start, which is challenging. Now, ADHD people have lower tonic dopamine. So your ability to maintain kind of like the everyday consistency that somebody who's neurotypical would have is already lower, but it's even lower if you get shitty sleep. It's even lower if you don't work out. It's even lower if you don't maintain bedtime routines. It's even lower if you're constantly binging on fast dopamine content. So dopamine content, and there's no such thing as a dopamine detox, like cannot stand it, doesn't exist. But there is such a thing as like binging on dopamine rich behaviors. So scrolling is one of those things that your system is constantly driving towards the next thing. Because it thinks the next thing's going to be that thing. Think the next thing's going to be the next thing. Think the next thing's going to be the next thing.
You called it micro gambling somewhere. I saw that, and it was like there are
It
micro
is.
gambling things that people do. I think naturally someone will be like, "Well, I don't gamble," but if you just quickly, because I think it's in line with what you're
Without a
saying.
doubt, yeah. So random reward interval is like a psychological term that we look at when it comes to dopamine release. So if we consistently drive a reward, right, and we do this with rats a ton, and we'll just say, all right, so like hit the button get a piece of cheese, hit the button, get a piece of cheese, hit the button, get a piece of cheese, hit the button, get a piece of cheese. And we kind of just like run that thing and it's just steady and it's consistent. What we'll do is we'll put them in another environment. We'll like have them hit the button. And before they get the reward, we call it sacrifice. We will sacrifice the animal. We will freeze them and then we will slice their brain up and we'll look at the dopamine rich receptors inside of their brain. And we have very similar, like mammals have very similar systems. And we'll be like, okay, so they've got this very enriched area of their brain, or we'll take a scan and we'll see how much dopamine they're kind of releasing. And there's a couple different ways to go do that. Then what we will do is we'll take another group of rats and we will have them hit the button. They'll get a piece of cheese. Hit the button, then they don't get a piece of cheese. And now the brain's kind of like, wait a second. Why? I don't understand. Wait. Okay, let me try to hit the button again. And then you get the piece of cheese. And they're like, okay, I get this. And then it's like, okay, they hit the button, then they don't get a piece of cheese. Then they hit the button again, they don't get a piece of cheese. Then they hit the button again, then they don't get a piece of cheese. And then they hit the button again, and then they get a piece of cheese. And then the brain's like, oh my God. And then you get this rocket of dopamine. And then we sacrifice these animals and we're like, holy shit. If we inconsistently reward them, dopamine is through the roof. And this created a model called reward prediction error. And reward prediction error, and it's the brain gambling on action. This thing might produce value, it might not produce value. It's also probably why we're addicted to our toxic X, because they're inconsistent. There's a ton of other bullshit that goes along with it. But RPE is what it stands for, reward prediction error. And what reward prediction error says is that there's basically 3 values that we can assign to the models that our brain predicts. So our brain is constantly predicting these models over and over and over again of like, I'm going to do X and I hope that I get Y. And it builds that model up. So the rats model is, okay, I hit the red button and then I think I'm going to get massive value. I'm going to get the cheese, right? The cheese is going to come out of the slot and like, can't wait to go do it. So it builds that model, hits the button, and then it doesn't happen. And the rat's like, wait a second, but like, I forgot, why didn't it happen this time? What if I do it again? And then it hits it again and then it goes, see, told you. And when it does that, it reinforces not the right one, or excuse me, the wrong one. It reinforces the positive of what it wants, right? So it kind of will skew data towards what the model sees as accurate and predictive. So there's positive RPE, which means that we got more than we anticipated, more than the model, right? This happens if we have a lot of like bad experiences or we're gambling and it's bad and it's bad and it's bad and it's bad. And then suddenly we win. And it's like, haha, right? And this is what our phones are doing, where it's like, oh my God, stupid. This is so stupid. Oh my God, this is the thing that I've been looking for this my entire life. Oh my God, what a revelation, right? And then we go to the next one and then it's like stupid, 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 stupid. You do that for like 6 minutes. Then you're like, oh, this meme, I have to send it to my grandma. My grandma, oh, this is going to change it, right? And this is what our brain does. And that's the positive RPE. And it is so much of something called phasic dopamine. Phasic dopamine is these big burst of dopamine that we get. And these big bursts of dopamine are designed to put us into this drive and this motivation and go get them. And like nothing's going to get in the way. And for normal people, phasic dopamine is released in response to recognizing value is right around the corner. So I just need to get you motivated. I'm going to have you take that action. My ADHD people don't necessarily release dopamine in the same way. So like I mentioned, and I'm just being transparent with the data on this is not done with hundreds of thousands of people. It's thousands of people that we're looking at this data. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. I'm just giving you a very clear outline, and maybe it hits and maybe it doesn't. But what we looked at is people with dopamine and ADHD, when they recognize value and the action is on the other side, they just need to take action in order to get that value. They don't release a ton of phasic dopamine out of the gate. What they'll do is release a little bit to kind of like get you going. But what releases a lot of dopamine is when they recognize reward, novelty, and epinephrine. They get stimulant from that. So somebody with ADHD, they aren't going to get the phasic hit that's going to put them into motivation like somebody neurotypical would. They need to receive some kind of feedback mechanism that it's working, that they're close, that they've made progress. And you can do this artificially. So what I teach my ADHD CEOs, executives, human beings, moms, dads, is that if you want to get yourself into gear and you know that you need to trigger hyperfixation, because people with ADHD have bigger phasic spikes once they get it. It's huge. And this is the hyperfixation that everybody with ADHD gets, right? It's this huge phasic spike and it's going, and then nothing else in the world matters. It's just you and this information and this data, and I'm going to go get it and I'm going to go crush it. you have to be able to find and build a reward system to trigger it. So this happens for a lot of people where they're like, oh my gosh, I can't hyperfixate. So like I got to go get some of these other random things done. So okay, I'm going to clean up my desk. I got these books. I'm going to start to put these things away. And your system gets a little bit of reward, sees a little bit of change. The desk is a little bit clearer. Things are a little bit more organized. Then your brain's like, attaboy, I gotcha. Rocket ship of dopamine. You got it, buckaroo. Hyperfixation. And what you just found is that, oh, your system started to see reward through either the use of time or organization. So time blindness is a very real thing for a lot of people with ADHD, but you can also use time knowing that it's skewed for your data to fixate and build these things. So I tell this is such a weird thing. I tell my entrepreneurs with it and go, great, you need to trigger hyperfixation. I want you to do 1 minute planks for 5 minutes or until failure, 5 minutes, and set the timer, right? So plank until you can't, take a 30-second break, plank until you can, then take a 30-second break, plank until you can't for 5 minutes, or go for a 5-minute walk or something that's physical and mobile, and then go do that thing and then see how you feel. And they're like, wait a second, why? I am so hyper fixated right now. Like, yeah, because you gave yourself a reward and the reward was the completion of time. So people with ADHD have this time blindness, but that's because the value of time is rewarded through completion, not through the experience of time like I would. So if I set a timer, let's say that I'm neurotypical, I'm using the timer and there's a stop point at the end of it. And my goal is to complete work through time. Somebody with ADHD does not complete work through time. Time is a deadline that is a reward for completion itself. So if you can trigger that factor and go, great, I've got timers all over my house. I set this little timer, 5 minutes. I'm gonna meditate. I'm gonna journal. I'm gonna read for 5 minutes. I still use this model on myself, even though I don't have this ADHD. So you can use models like that. And I would also highly recommend that whether you have an iPhone or an Android, pull out the Notes app and you just put a title on it, say ADHD hyperfixation, and you list out as many of the hyperfixations as you've had over the past like week. And then you continue to do that and you're going to see a pattern emerge. There's always a pattern. People are like, ADHD is so random. Bullshit. There's always a pattern to it. There's always something that you stumbled over that allowed you to hyperfixate and trigger this thing. And then you don't look at what the hyperfixation was. What did you do before the hyperfixation? Fold laundry? Do microtask? Make a cup of coffee? Talk to your mom? Get the mailbox? Clear out the dishwasher? Like there's always these micro tasks that trigger enough of a reward that moves you into that hyperfixation. And then tonic dopamine goes up and then you're locked in. Now, the thing with triggering this hyperfixation is that you need to recognize as an ADHD entrepreneur, you are a sprinter, not a jogger. And what that means is that if you are a sprinter, not a jogger, you are not steady, consistent 5 days a week. That's not you. You are a sprint Monday, Wednesday, Friday, rest Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. And you're going to get more work done than somebody who's a jogger. But if you try to pretend to be a jogger and trigger hyperfixation every day, you're going to deplete and exhaust because you're going to hyperfixate and you're going to work all the way from like 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that's okay. Truly, it's okay. Don't try to change who you are. I'm a procrastinator, right? I own the ever living shit out of my procrastination. So like I have to go give a keynote. I'm not going to make the keynote until 48 hours before or 24 hours before. And I don't shame myself for it. It's what I do. And I go crush it on stage every single time, right? But I'm not shaming myself for trying to go do that. But people with ADHD, you are a sprinter. So haul ass, do it. But if you try to sprint every single day, you're only going to exhaust yourself. You need to rest. You need to recover. Again, shit ton of information, but like what stuck?
No, that's fascinating. You can probably see me, if anyone watches this rather than listens to it, you can see me like looking around the room as this is all landing for me. Just so I've got this clear for myself
Yeah.
and to digest this for the listeners as well. So the tonic dopamine is the dopamine that is kind of like ever present. Everybody wakes up with a reserve of it almost to just get normal everyday life done, of which those of us with ADHD have a lower reserve, meaning that motivation to do everyday things is naturally lower anyway. You then conversely have phasic dopamine, which is the high desire to do certain tasks. Those that are neurotypical can almost thinking of it like a caricature. They're laying in bed and they're like, right, let's go. And they go and do the thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the release of phasic dopamine for someone with ADHD is significantly smaller to start with, or almost like the gas valve. They've let a little bit of air pressure out and a little bit has been released to us, which is often not enough on its own to get our ass into gear to go and do the thing that we know we should be doing anyway, which is where I think so many people live with that frustration. I know I did for a number of years, where it's like, I know exactly what the fuck I should be doing inside my business. Why can I not make myself do it consistently? So what we're saying then is that to have maybe an element of autonomy and predictability over your ableness to go and do the fucking thing is have like a palate cleanser almost. Have like a set of things that you do, like a launch pad for
Mhm.
to like, if I do these things, that releases intentionally phasic dopamine, which then almost like gives me the rocket launch to get out of orbit. And I'm like, cool, now I can fucking outrun everybody.
Yeah. It's pattern awareness. Like at the core of it, it's so understanding mechanism helps understand cause versus symptom, right? So the cause of the hyperfixation, we can say that there's been a trickle, you've accidentally stumbled over some kind of value or reward, your system's kind of gone up and gone to go do that. Um, there is also, this is going to break some hearts. There is a PhD in psychology, Dr. Inna, and she just wrecks people online. Like, I hope I never show up on her page for bad science, but she'll go after people that's like, this is just complete bullshit. And she did one a couple weeks ago, and like her and I talk, and she's like, uh, I don't want to get this wrong. I don't think she's Ukrainian. She might be Russian, but she's got this like scary, right? Like,
Eastern
hey, how you
European.
doing? I mean, yeah, she for sure. And it's like, holy shit. Um, and she's talking through this person's like, yeah, people with ADHD have this pattern awareness, like more pattern awareness than anybody else. And she's like, oh no, look at this giant study. And people with ADHD actually don't have better pattern awareness than other people. It's actually worser. It's worse than. Now, that doesn't mean that it is stable across the board. It is pattern awareness is developmental. You have to build it. And people with ADHD think that they have better pattern awareness because they're stronger at masking. So they are better at identifying patterns outside of themselves, within themselves. So they're really good at projecting, but they're not really good at responsibility and ownership. So, with what you're talking about inside of this regard, you need objective data. It's kind of what I tell everybody to be able to trust the subjective data. So, objective data is measurable, subjective data is experiential and expressive. So, we need some objective data. So, throw a biometric ring on or whatever the heck it is. There used to be ones that I recommend, and then they outsource their data to places I don't recommend. So you got to find one that works for you. The latest company that I kind of partnered up with is Ultra Human, and I don't even wear it if I'm being completely transparent because I don't need it right now. But those things can be really helpful for like, all right, why did or did I not do those things? And then, like you had mentioned, it is, and I'm saying this because what I'm going to say, the model is accurate, the science is not. The tonic dopamine is not. It does act as a buffer. It is basically your resilience for motivation and mood stability. Now, the very deep mechanism of that, it's way more nuanced than that. But I want you to think about it in that way as if it is accurate. So if you're getting bad sleep, your ability to be intentional and autonomous, which means that you're in control of your thoughts, feelings, and actions, is higher, right? So if you're well slept, if you're well fed, if you're hitting the gym, you're going to feel really good. So your availability to not only activate tonic dopamine, to leach into phasic dopamine is way higher, right? That's what you want is you want phasic. I'm going to go clean the house and then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get this work done. And you clean the house and that triggers all these other factors. And then you go up and hit that hyperfixation. And it's a Wednesday today that we're recording. And then great, tomorrow you rest. You just rest, right? But what does rest actually look like should be the question that everybody's asking.
Which is exactly my thought. And this is something that I see with so many entrepreneurs, myself being the case with this brain type, is that there's a part of me that like I know I can tap into that hyperfixation, and I feel like I can do it relatively consistently. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I have never accounted for, or I've ultimately neglect because it's a part that I've seen as not even a weakness, but just something that I don't want to look at, is the tax that I pay for doing so. And I'd be
Yeah.
curious because I know that I know objectively it's true because I feel it. And I know you speak about this a lot, which you're alluding to there, is that if I have a hyper focus day today, let's say, and I've created the conditions for that. So for me, that's typically a Monday. I don't have any calls. I've got like clear runway, and it is a hyper focus day. Monday is hyper focus day. How would I best, in knowing this, approach running my business from a like management of my time and my week?
It really depends. It depends what the business is, and it depends where the business is. So I'll talk about it where 80% of entrepreneurs are, which is 0 to 100K. Um, what I would do is I would set up a schedule of run days: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days during the week. And I would set each of those days up, and I would set one or two of them, depending, to be service oriented. What's the product that you deliver, right? And then I would set up an administrative day and just like the regular mundane bullshit that you have to do on your rest days. So stretch days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, get shit done days, those are where you deliver the service. It's where you need creativity. It's where you're going to stretch, right? These are the days you want to trigger hyperfixation. Emails, administrative, like posting, like some client deliverable stuff, that's your Tuesday, Thursday. It's familiar, it's routine. That's where I would put and park myself very securely. And I would rest hard as hell on the weekends. Now, rest is not doom scrolling. Rest is intentional focus. It's doing fun things. Like the greatest amount of rest and recovery is genuinely just fun, right? Now, if I could stack it up for you, and you were like living in the same city as me, I would stack you up Monday, Wednesday, Friday to get things done. I would record Monday, Wednesday. I would edit Monday, Wednesday, and then Friday I would post, deliver, work with my clients one on one. Tuesday, Thursday, I would just kind of rest, recover. I'd go to the gym, I'd read books, I'd go to coffee shops, I'd do some research. I would basically acquire information to make Monday, Wednesday, Friday more potent, right? So research for me is like very relaxing. Reading, but like I read a ton, right? It's very relaxing for me to go do those things. It's very stimulating. So I like that. And then I would paddleboard, go to the beach, hang out with my wife, like do all of those things that you have available to you too. And then on the weekend, I would super chill. I'd get some extra sleep on Saturday. I would just do really slow that, leave the pajamas on, like go get your nails done, like whatever the hell those things are, get a massage, like very low stimulation activities is kind of where I would bolster up. Now, 100,000 to 500,000, you got a team. 1 day per week is all about the team. I like to do it on Wednesdays. So 500K, you probably got a 2-person team, and you're probably outsourcing 100K, maybe 200K of your business revenue to running the company and running the team. And that's very different. So if my social bandwidth, my social resilience is really high. So I can work with a ton of people and I don't really get burnt out. Like I don't work with specific people because they absolutely do burn me out. But if you are a person that can deal with socialization and you can execute on that, then that is the next step, is that you get people to run your business for you. And you get 1 or 2 people that have ADHD, and then you get some like neurotypicals. Because what you want to go to $1 million is you need a combination of joggers and sprinters, right? Your sprinters are really good at sales. And then the person that's doing the sales, you hand them off to onboarding to people who are your joggers that can just, they're steady, they're consistent, they're answering emails, they're doing their administrative tasks. Like your assistant needs to be a jogger, right? They need to be like chilling, right? And this principle not only works for ADHD people, it also works as a business, as an entity, as a person. Because there's going to be an escape velocity that a business needs to get to $1 million or $100,000 or $500,000. You need to be able to know, okay, we are going to sprint. I'm going to be pretty fucking tired for the next like 3 to 6 months. And then you're going to go like, okay, 6 months was way too long to do a sprint. I can do 6 weeks, but like it's going to take me 6 months to recover from this, which is what everybody does. And then you kind of figure out those systems and strategies too. Then you get to $1 million, and then 1 million to 5 million. You've got 5 to 10 team members, and you've hired somebody. You've created a hierarchy now. So now you have employees that are doing specific works. They're doing your delegation. They're taking care of service, and then you've got basically directors or managers. And then it should be difficult for problems to get to you if you do this successfully. What you want to do is build resilience from top down. And if a problem gets to you, it should be completely on fire, and like nobody else can kind of resolve it, or there's a service issue, or there's like a customer service problem that you have to go deal and manage with. But the goal is for the top down. If you're the owner, you're the CEO, your goal is to make systems, strategies, and understanding that regulates the rest of the team. Everybody's seen, everybody's heard, everybody's loved, everybody's doing good work, and your time should be really, really expensive, right? So somebody wants to come work with you. You're like, yeah, 5K an hour. That's just kind of where we're at. I have these other options out there and available, but you stacked yourself up to make your time that valuable. Um, and you'll figure out things along the way with this as well. But again, you don't give up the schedule. So I always say build a business around your lifestyle, not a lifestyle around your business. So if you want to work 2 hours a day, then you figure out how to be so valuable that your time is 3 to 5K an hour for those periods of time. Might take 5 years to kind of get there, but if you don't build a business and then try to put lifestyle into it, build a lifestyle and then build the business on top.
Totally agree. Like any of my clients that are listening know that we have like the LBI, which is like the order of which that we approach things in, which is like life, business, and identity. Build the life you want.
Yeah.
Get clear on that, which is like led by how I want to feel every day. It's like, okay, that's how I want to feel every day. So therefore, what needs to be in it every day? What's the
Hmm.
business that needs to exist to facilitate that? And then who do I need to become to make all that shit happen? Um, I know that I know I've got clients that are doing over 7 figures that will be listening to this. So just a little bit on what you were saying there. I'm really curious with the infrastructure and the hierarchy. If they are likely, let's assume, going to be the sprinter at the very, very top. What would you then suggest the hierarchy from a split of sprinter and jogger would look like underneath that? Would you say their direct report would almost best be a jogger?
Your ops person needs to be a jogger. Your operations person has to be a jogger. Your finance person. So the CEO can be ADHD. A lot of entrepreneurs, CEOs are ADHD. COO needs to be a jogger. They need to be consistent and steady. Um, your CFO, who's running your finances, consistent and steady. And then your marketing person, no, they could be ADHD because you want them to have these burst of ideas and you want their burst of ideas to line up with yours, right? So if you're marketing and your marketing person and you can sit down and you either go to coffee if you're in the same city or you sit down and like, all right, 8 a.m. We're going to drink some coffee and we're going to go ideas 30 minutes and we're going to execute on those ideas and we're going to build a thing and then we're going to send it out. We're going to do this thing sent out to the rest of the ops team so that they can build and then we can fulfill and they're going to build because the ops team's consistent and steady. And then the next week on Monday, instead of doing the same 30-minute meeting, you're going to put the deliverables in. Every business is different though. So like manufacturing and delivering t-shirts or switchboards or whatever the heck the thing is way different than somebody like you and I are doing service industry. So you and I have a different strategy, a different system than anybody else is going to have. So you've got to manage and mitigate what it is that you're doing. Um, Most people are going to run into the problem. They're at $1 million business and they're like, holy shit, I built this $1 million business accidentally. I got to do something different. This is not working. And most people get really freaked out by that. And then you bring in somebody like me. And then you bring somebody like me in, and you're like, okay, so you're looking at this in the framework of a jog or a sprinter. So, yeah, of course, it looks like you have to sprint for the next 6 months to survive this thing. I am going to compartmentalize. I'm going to take my trauma. I'm going to take all my information. I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to put this into compartments. And then we're going to say, I just need you to make it to this checkpoint. Then we're going to make it to this checkpoint. And we're going to make it to this checkpoint. And then we're going to do an analysis over the last 2 months of our work. And we're going to say, did this work? Yes, no. Yes, some things worked. No, didn't really work. And then we're going to do it again. And then we're going to chop it up. And then what you're going to realize is no matter what, time keeps on passing. But 6 months have gone by and you're not burnt out, you're not tired, you're not exhausted. And oh, look and behold, you've actually made some really cool, sustainable change and you've learned a lot along the way. So when you don't know what to do and you can afford it, you outsource it to somebody you trust with it. And that's what consulting, that it's completely, or coaching, whatever you want to call it nowadays, that's what that's for.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And just one question that I know is going to be in some people's minds at this point, and maybe it's not a question, maybe it's more so just like a concern or an area of caution that they may be having. If someone was to listen to this, and even if I'm thinking me a couple of years ago listening to this and listening to what you're saying there around, right, you need to intentionally like structure your week in a way that actually it may seem that you are resting more than you're actually really hustling and working. And if we everybody's been Alex Hormozy pillified and told that every day must be suffering and you must be working
Yeah.
until you pretty
Yeah.
much drop dead. Someone might be incredibly resistant to that. What would you say to that founder?
Leaf blower. They're doing my grass. So it's wrong thinking. And this is like the issue with doing some of this work is like, okay, so you're taking action from a paradigm that just does not work. right? So no matter how many systems, no matter how much structure you put into it, the paradigm's always it's gonna ruin you because at its core, it's messed up. So your paradigm currently states that if I'm not working, grinding, hustling 5 days a week, then I'm messing up. Um, and Hormozy, good dude, great systems. He's doing a lot of different things. He's running $100 million business. $100 million. It's different. I'm a single dad. My systems will not match his systems, and your systems will not. And this is like a huge problem. Is like you have to build systems, and you can take models and look at what works, and then you take the Lego pieces and you put them together to build your own weird little messed up thing. For me, I am a jogger that lives like a sprinter, and I'm really good at it, right? So like my tiny human's out there. I don't know what she's doing. I can't hear her playing with anything, which is the most dangerous thing, which means that there's probably paint out. So when those things are going on, but that's the most important thing to me. She is the most important thing in my life. So I stack my life up to protect that. Wisdom is 90% aversion. It's 90% like doing the things that you don't work, and it's 10% intuitive decisions. Got to live that way, right? Same thing with nervous system regulation. It's 90% avoidance of shit that you don't want to have more of in your life and 10% action. So for people that are like, oh my gosh, like I don't think this is going to work, you've stopped something that you won't even try for what? For what? So this is where I take everybody, and the only thing that I am truly and exceptionally good at is not the neuroscience and the self-regulation and the models. I am annoyingly consistent and accountable with people. Annoying, right? So I only work with 4 people at a time because, especially in one-on-one capacity, I'm texting them every fucking day, right? Like, oh, you said you're going to do this thing. Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? Why didn't you? And then it's not, oh, I didn't do it because I'm like, and I'm not shaming them. I'm like, great, let's get curious about what stopped you. How do we hit the brakes on this? Well, let's understand that different, right? And this is how you build the new paradigm. So paradigm is a framework of thoughts, feelings, and actions that you've put together that is basically a predictive model. And your brain is predicting that if I produce change in this way, it's just not going to work. It's fear, right? If you looked at it with curiosity and said, okay, if this did work, what do I think it would look like? Ooh, all right, now you're changing the way that your brain's working. So Carol Dweck, Mindset, great book, talks all the way through this. So any opportunity, any circumstance, any experience that you go through holds both fear and curiosity inside of it. I'm a firm believer in that. So great, the fear is going to come faster. The curiosity is going to take time. Burn off the fear, right? Look at it, false evidence appearing real. What feels real to this? Write it down, name it, identify it, and then say, I wonder why that's there. Wonder how that got there. What is this reminding me of? And once you start to play that game, you're an animal. You're an animal. Like nothing can fuck with you at that point. It's the same thing like you and I getting manhandled at the jujitsu gym by people, like 30, 40 pounds less than we are and 5 to 6 inches shorter than we are. Like, oh, you need a humbling experience? Great. But you don't take it personally. You take it as data. And when you take that as data and you're like, oh man, this fear is telling me more about something that I want more of in my life. Awesome. There truly is not a whole lot of things that stop you at that point except emotions. When we take emotions as literal instead of data collection, which is why emotional regulation is so important, we are fucked. Cannot do that, right? Got to emotionally regulate, take this information, compound it, express it, and then see what the information on the other side of the expression is actually telling you. But most people get these emotions and they don't know what to do with it and don't have the emotional skill and they react, they snap at it. And then they're like, oh man, I regret doing that. Sweet. Let's work on it. Well, how do we get there? Are you slept? Are you fed? Did you go to the gym this week? Got stuff going on at home? There's always a reason, right? So we just got to find what those reasons and patterns are.
Dude, I love that. I just want to finish on a couple of rapid fire questions, if that's cool.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Dude, amazing. What's one thing you'd have a fan that was listening to this do this week?
Triggers, hyperfixation triggers. I would either bust out. So the thing is, I journal, I write all the time because people with ADHD, people like me, I need to slow down. So get yourself a journal, my man, get yourself a journal and you put a data center in that thing. And it just says ADHD hyperfixation. And you go back and you think through the times and the experiences, the last time that you've been hyperfixated, put it down and look for patterns. It'll do you a huge favor.
And
and then do
adding to
that.
that
Go
was what you said earlier. Sorry to interject. Was like not only looking
No,
at
no,
what did you hyperfixate on, but like what did you do before the hyperfixation? That
that's
was really
exactly
interesting.
it. That's the only thing that matters is what happened before. That's it.
Yeah, I love that. What's one thing that you started doing that changed everything for you?
I mean, it's really trusting myself. And I know it sounds like super etheric, but there's like certain circumstances and people that I'm just like, oh, I'm not getting the right feeling from you. And I don't take action on that. That's an emotion, but I give myself time and space to look deeper at it. My game changer has always, like, the thing that absolutely changed my life is reading and writing. I would, if I could make everybody read and write every day, I absolutely would. Even if you've got ADHD, even if it's hard, write, blog, listen, journal, like whatever the thing is. I think it's so important to learn how to read and have dialogue with the person that you're in the book with. Like, you should be combat, you should be doing battle with the author. And sometimes they win and they'll draw you into this world. And sometimes they'll lose and you'll be like the book that I'm going through again is The Untethered Soul. Um, Interesting book. But man, me and Michael are going after it. I'm like, dude, this idea is fucking dumb. That's going to hurt people. Then there's things I'm like, yeah, that might actually be true. But for the first time, I go through books with different colored pens and highlighters. And I went through this first in 2016 and then 2019, 2023, and now I'm in 2026. And I'm like, these ideas just, they're not working for me right now. They aren't lining up. So you got to learn how to read. And then your voice when you write is so different than the voice that's in your head. And for me, writing things down has been a game changer.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, if I was to say what mine would be, it'd be the writing down, externalizing my thoughts, externalizing my brain. As you say, the version that hits the paper is not the version that is echoing around my head. And maybe I have the natural, well, not natural, but I have the learned skill through doing what I do of almost being able to self coach in those capacities. But that is a skill, and that's only because I've done the reps. And I find myself like challenging those thoughts, and anybody can do that. It's also funny you showed The Untethered Soul. I would say that's the first book that I read maybe 6 or 7 years ago that was really difficult for me to read, because I went into that book with as like not a religious man or anything like that, and that book and the Surrender Experiment that he's wrote, that they have the through line of God and whatnot throughout. And that was like my first experience of listening to a chapter and being like, I don't fucking believe that. And like you say, having this back
Yeah,
and
you have a
forth in my
dialogue.
own and challenging. So yeah, that's really funny that was the book that you actually just wrote there.
Yeah, I'm not a spiritual, I'm not a religious person, but I've started to, like, I don't know if it's not a Catholic God, it's not a Buddhist God, it's not anything else, but I feel better having dialogue with something bigger than myself. Right? Like, the scientific would be like it's a monad, right? There's something that's indivisible, um, that is above all of us. And I don't believe in determinism. I don't believe that this is just a random oops a daisy accident. Maybe we're in a simulation, maybe not, but I know my life gets better when I have active dialogue and think that this is all going to work out in my favor.
Yeah, nice. I like that. And ultimately, that's all that matters anyway. It's like
Yeah, I
what
don't say
tools.
amen when I'm like doing things like this. I say ta-da, right? And it's like, turns out this universe really doesn't give a fuck. It just wants to be your friend. That's the way that I'm going at it.
Yeah, nice, nice. I love that. And final two. What's one thing that over the past 12 months you've deleted or stopped doing?
Explaining myself to people who don't understand themselves. Like, in my personal life, there's been good, there's been bad, there's been beautiful, there's been ugly. And there is a certain point where you just gotta say, you know what? You don't deserve my time, energy, and attention at all. And you just cut. And like, people get mad at that. Like, well, what the heck is going on? And it's like, no, like, if you can't hold space for all of my feelings, right? Then you don't get to hold space for any of them.
Final question that I've been wanting to ask since the start. What would you say to the 23-year-old version of you now that you've gone through this journey that you're at now?
I don't know. He wouldn't listen. Like, that's the thing, is like, if I told him anything, he was so sad. He was so scared. And I don't know. I I would probably just go back and give him a hug and tell him that I love him and it's gonna be okay. Even when it doesn't look like it's okay. Like, there's been a quote that um doesn't make a lot of sense, but it'll all be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. And that's just been, it just echoes when things get hairy and things get fuzzy. And I'm like, what? Why? Why is this my life right now? And I very much lived through that. I'm like, okay, this just isn't the end. This is just a stopping point. So great, it's a stopping point. And that 23-year-old version, I don't know, that was a lot for somebody at 23 to go through. So I got a lot of compassion for him. And I don't know if I would tell him anything as much as be a person that would actually listen without trying to fix him.
I imagine there's a lot of people, even now, that need to hear that as well.
I think so. I think if you find somebody who listens and sees you, all of you, and doesn't try to fix it, doesn't criticize, um, don't let those people go. Cherish them.
Dude, it's been a beautiful episode. I feel like we could probably spin up a part two at some point, so I might have to
We
put a
will.
put a
We
favor in.
will. I will come see you. We'll do it in person.
Yes, do mate. I know you're heading to London at some point. Like what are you
Yeah.
working on at the moment, and where can people find more of you?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but like it's just the process of like dealing with editors and stuff like that. But I should finish up my final chapter in my book, which is focused on dopamine defense in this modern world and keeping you in the driver's seat of your autonomy. Um, and then I go into the editing process, and yeah, and then I'm gonna rest this winter. I'm gonna take 2 months off before like a book tour and things like that. And I have never taken longer than a week off in 10 years. Um, and I'm not proud of it, but it's definitely time. So that's what I'm gonna do.
Nice. And when that time comes, I'll be buying that book, and I will retrospectively put the link to the book in the show notes for this episode as well. So whenever you're listening to this, if this is a future episode that you're listening to, then head to the show notes, and the link for that book will be
Yeah,
there for people to buy. But
yeah.
mate, I appreciate
I've
you
got
coming
some
on
other
today.
information that's out there too, so you don't have to wait for the book. I've just dropped an ADHD course actually. It's $50 and it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, sick, sick. Again, I'll ask for the link off the back of
Yeah,
today.
for sure.
Put
Yeah.
that in the show notes. I'd encourage everybody who's enjoyed today's episode to go and check that out. 50, I think that's less than 50 quid for the UK audience. So yeah, dude, I heavily appreciate you coming on today. As I say, I've been a fan of your work for a long time. I appreciate you being vulnerable, transparent, honest, laying your cards on the table, and also giving a tremendous amount of value. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Truly. It's been a good time. Thanks for having me.